Now, Dr. Walvoord years ago said this in his book, The Nations in Prophecy. He wrote this back in the 60s. Although conclusions concerning the role of America in prophecy in the end time are necessarily tentative, the scriptural evidence is sufficient to conclude that America, in that it will not be a major power and apparently does not figure largely in either the political, economic, or religious aspects of the world. So something's going to happen. Now, there are a lot of ideas out there about what's going to happen to America. Some people say we're going to be part of some, North American Union. That's possible. I don't know why we'd want to hook up right now economically to Mexico. Now, in the future, we might want to. They may be in better shape than we are. But right now, I don't know why we would want to do that. I don't see that coming in the near future, and I know there's been a lot written about that and those who would disagree. But America's not mentioned in Bible prophecy, so what's the future? What's going to take place in this country? Well, there's a few different ideas out there. One of them I ran across, a guy in Russia who has predicted, I guess, several events in the future. Igor Panarin has come up with this idea. There's going to be this great war in America in 2010, and we're going to divide into these different parts. America's going to be divided up. Now, the only thing I had a problem with this is Oklahoma's there with Texas, and the whole thing's called the Texas Republic. And if it's going to be that way, it ought to be the Oklahoma Republic is the way I look at it. That's right. And, in the Bible, you remember in Daniel chapter 4, in that great prophecy where Nebuchadnezzar's turned into a beast, you remember, for 7 years? In Oklahoma, we like to say God turned him into a longhorn, is what he did, and put him out there to pasture all that time. Well, anyway, there's a lot of ideas out there about what's going to happen to America. But I want to just lay before you 4 plausible scenarios. Now, let me say this up front. The Bible doesn't tell us what happens. But the scenarios I'm going to lay forward are not far-fetched. If America is not going to be a great power, if this reunited Roman Empire is going to rule the world, something's got to happen. And we can look around today and say, look, what are some of the kinds of things that could take place that could reduce America from her superpower status? Now, one of them is, and this is a horrible thing to think about, is a nuclear 9/11. Let me say this up front. I love America. I don't want anything like this to happen. None of us do. But there are 9 nations today that have nuclear weapons, and Iran is trying to become the 10th. In fact, they just found out they have a third more highly enriched uranium than they said they did. They have a ton of it now, enough to make a nuclear weapon. They've been lying about it, and they just launched a satellite into space, and that's got with a rocket that could obviously hit the nation of Israel. This is something in our country today we don't want to think about, but the possibility that something could be snuck into our country and be detonated in somewhere like New York City or somewhere like Washington, D.C., the consequences to our country just politically, but also economically, but just to the psychology of our country, I don't know if we would ever recover if something like that were to take place. It's something that's too horrific, really, in some ways, to even think about. There's a new book out called The Nuclear Express. I got a copy of the book, and I got this quote from it. The author says, "A fierce storm is gathering. An Islamic bomb will bring about a world in which millions will die, and more than one democratic society will be consigned to the dust heap of history." That's what's being said by experts who are out there. I got this out of the paper here just a couple months ago. Look at this quote. "The United States can expect a terrorist attack using nuclear or more likely biological weapons before 2013. Our margin of safety is shrinking, not growing. The United States should be less concerned that terrorists will become biologists and far more concerned that biologists will become terrorists." That's the threat that we have. And again, this is coming from the Commission on the Prevention of WMD Proliferation and Terrorism from our own government. Now, something else, I used to hear guys talk about this idea of an EMP, this electromagnetic pulse. It's a nuclear weapon that's exploded up in space or up high above a country. And I used to think, well, this is just kind of some other doomsday kind of thing out there to scare people. Well, this has been in the Wall Street Journal a lot here lately. There's a whole commission to assess this threat. It says a nuclear-generated electromagnetic pulse is one of a small number of threats that has the potential to hold our society seriously at risk and might result in defeat of our military forces. The idea is you explode a nuclear weapon up above the country and it would knock out all of the electronic communication, and not just for a day or two till you can get it back up and running again, but for a long, long period of time. I ran across this statistic back on July 8th of 1962. The EMP from the high altitude, it was 250 miles above Johnson Island, turned off 300 streetlights in Oahu, Hawaii, 740 miles away. That was back a long time ago with a lot less powerful weapons. Here's what the Wall Street Journal said. Imagine you're a terrorist with a single nuclear weapon. You could wipe out the U.S. city of your choice, or you could decide to destroy the infrastructure of the entire U.S. economy and leave millions of Americans to die of starvation or want a medical care. The latter scenario is the one envisioned by a long-running commission to assess the threat from electromagnetic pulse or EMP. These dangers are out there today. There are people who want to destroy us, who want to wipe out our way of life. Another thing, again, that's not too far-fetched today, I mean, look at the financial condition that we're in our country today. I mean, look at these headlines. Bailout nation, Wall Street financial meltdown, Wall Street panics, markets lose $1 trillion, Dow plunges 778 points. The fall of America Incorporated. Some people have called this the equivalent to an economic 9/11 in our country, an economic tsunami that's come against our nation. Now, aren't you glad you came today to hear all this? But it's true, isn't it? I mean, it's what we see taking place. I heard on Fox News the other night, by next year, 2010, the U.S. government will be 40% of the U.S. economy, taking more and more control. They may control the whole banking system. Now, again, as one of our speakers said, I don't think that's an accident, because as more control is taken domestically and more globalism comes in, it's going to pave the way for one man to come in and rule the world economy. In fact, Henry Kissinger said on several occasions now that what Barack Obama has right now is not a crisis, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to create a new world order. And he's used that phrase over and over again. But as the government takes more authority, I'm reminded of those words of Thomas Jefferson, who says, a government that is strong enough to give you everything you want is strong enough to take away everything you have.